Change of policy by President Bush. U.S. troops will move into northern Iraq to help desperate refugees. A national rail strike right around the bend. And frightening new report about the risk of drinking while pregnant. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. President Bush tonight announced an adjustment in his policy toward the ravaged Kurds. The president now says U.S. troops will move into northern Iraq to set up a few encampments strictly to deliver aid to Kurdish refugees. Mr. Bush insisted that American forces will stay out of any fighting between Kurdish rebels and Saddam Hussein. White House correspondent Susan Spencer reports. Susan?
Dan, the same president who has been so defensive at times about whether or not the United States was doing enough to help the Kurds, tonight suddenly switched signals and announced that the United States will do more, much, much more. He outlined a massive relief program operating inside northern Iraq.
I have directed the U.S. military to begin immediately to establish several encampments in northern Iraq where relief supplies for these refugees will be made available in large quantities and distributed in an orderly way.
The operation will involve medical teams, logistical support, combat air patrol. The president said the U.S. will protect the security of Kurds in these encampments, but he doesn't see this as a long-term proposition.
The United States is not going to intervene militarily in Iraq's internal affairs and risk being drawn into a Vietnam-style quagmire. This remains the case. Nor will we become an occupying power with U.S. troops patrolling the streets of Baghdad. We intend to turn over the administration of and security for these sites as soon as possible to the United Nations.
Before the announcement, President Bush spoke with the leaders of France, Germany, Britain, and Turkey. Whatever hesitancy he may have had about risking becoming mired in Iraq apparently was overcome by the simple fact that up to 1,000 people are dying there every single day. Dan?
Susan, what does the White House, what does President Bush see as the potential downside of this?
Well, the downside is just what the president was referring to briefly, that fears that we could become mired in Iraq. He indicated that the United Nations will move in as quickly as possible, but as we know from past experience, it's sometimes easier to go in than it is to come out, and I think that is a concern. On the other hand, this was a case, I feel, where political and humanitarian reasons just left him little other course. Dan?
Our new White House correspondent, Susan Spencer. Susan, congratulations and thanks. On the Turkish side of the Iraqi border, U.S. troops and Western volunteers are just starting to get a handle on the refugee crisis. Alan Pizzi is on the scene.
Thousands of refugees are finally being taken off the mountainsides where they were starving and without clean water. Their new home is a camp on a flat plain where it should be easier to help them. But so far, the Turkish government hasn't supplied enough food, and the refugees complain there still isn't adequate medical help for sick children. Back in the mountains, it's still a hellhole, but there's a new can-do spirit in the air. The U.S. Special Forces hit town today. They came up the road in a truck and were greeted with smiles and waves. The first thing they did was make friends with the kids. The way soldiers always do, they handed out smiles and candy.
All right, gentlemen, let's do it.
Then they linked up with the other can-do people of the camp, the Dutch branch of Doctors Without Borders.
Okay, you went right on the edge over there, right?
Pink Rietsma set up the doctor's operation here without Turkish permission because the refugees needed it.